Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. We're your hosts. I'm Teresa Conti.
And I'm Ivana Polonio. We talk with people just like you. We have honest conversations about current issues that women and men face and how we pivot to address them in our lives.
This podcast is your companion as you step into a workout or take some time for yourself.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Step Into the Pivot, where we talk to fabulous, courageous, and classy Maria Ponzi. Teresa, can you tell us a little bit about Teresa's background and why did we invite her to talk to us?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit Ana Maria's background. She's the former owner, CEO, and past president of the Ponzi Vineyards. Currently, she works a lot doing a special presentation called the 4-Ounce Pour, and really presents her life in wine as a framework to really help inspire her audiences, right, to slow down, create more meaning in their everyday lives, right, which is something we really all need to do. So I'm going to just jump right in with Ana Maria, and can you talk to us about how that emotional process of selling your winery, which has become part of your identity? What were some of those experiences? What were some of those kind of immediate experiences you had when you sold the winery?
Well, thank you. First, I just want to thank you both for having me on your podcast. I'm thrilled to be here with you and share my experience with you. The sale of my family's winery was a little bit unexpected. And I think that sometimes this happens. If you're, owning a winery or a business, you're just moving along and as business as usual. And then there might be a moment when you think, maybe I need to think about this again. And you kind of get your head out of your day and think it out. And for me, it was probably like 3 years before we actually sold that I had a moment of where am I going with this business? Have I put all that I can into it? And what more can I give it? And you have to understand that this is a business that I've been a part of since I was a little girl. It was a family business. I grew up in it. I eventually took over the presidency many, many years later, but worked in it for over, almost 35 years. And I think that the decision to sell there was many reasons for it, but it was also kind of a sudden thing. It was a thought of what's next and what's the future? What do I have to give to it? Where are we going with it? And what are the options from here? And then there was this great opportunity that came from the buyer, who was Bollinger Champagne out of France. And they were very interested, and everything seemed to be really in sync with this buyer in terms of values. And I was always, thinking, we as a family, I should even say, had always thought about the wine industry in Oregon. It was never just our brand or our company. And so when we had this potential buyer, it was also part of the conversation was, this is a French company coming into Oregon that we don't have anything like this. We don't have a sparkling house. We don't have a champagne house. And so this would be an opportunity to elevate the region and the state. So it was for many, many reasons that we, finally moved into the sale. But I say it was sudden because it was not like, okay, in 10 years, I'm going to sell my business, or in 15 years, I'm going to sell. And you prepare for that. This was, for me, rather sudden. And so for that, there's a lot of things that happened that I didn't expect.
Okay, so you basically go from something that was so, long term. So much something that you both like grew up with and grew up in. And of course, you feel so deeply connected to. And then you talk about this like pretty sudden. So this is why as soon as we heard that, we were like, wow, pivot candidate. There's the sale is a pivot. that happens. So you then start to detach from the winery on so many different levels. Obviously, there's the tactical level, the practical level, but emotionally too. Tell us about what that process was like as you're also turning more inwards and starting to essentially attach with yourself with some inner layers of, who you really are as an individual, as a person, your sense of self relative to your professional achievements, all of the accolades, the, very wonderful accomplishments as a leader, and as the winery owner. So tell us about that detachment and the attachment.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share?
Well, I think going into it, and again, the negotiation was happening over the pandemic, so it was happening over 2020. It was a full year. It was over 12 months of negotiations, very long, and we all were in a very surreal moment, right, during the pandemic of, nothing was normal. So that was happening while this negotiation was happening. And as you said, this is a family business that had been with us for over 50 years. So this whole thing was a little bit unusual. And what I found myself, and I think I actually attribute this to being a female leader, a woman, and in a leadership role, is that I wanted to make sure that everyone was okay. And I sort of forgot about me. I wasn't really even in the conversation. It was more, what are my customers going to think? Well, first of all, like, what are the family members going to think? And then what are the customers going to think? And like, what about the employees and all the externals, if you will, as opposed to what about you? Like, what are you going to do? Because I was so hyper aware that this brand that we had built, many people were referring to it as a legacy brand. Many people referring it to a founding winery in the state, and actually one of the first Pinot Noir producers in the country. So there was like you mentioned, there was a lot of pressure, external pressures on making this transaction happen. And so yeah, so then once it actually happened, and we were doing things like, I asked, that we have a final gathering with all of our friends and family, right? And having people coming in and literally crying, and saying, why are you can't take the winery away. This is our winery. And I'm like, but actually, no, it's a business. But realizing at that moment that people had such a tie to this business that for me was really a business. Yes, it was family, but it was still a business. And for so many other people, it was more than that. So the realization of that, and kind of like coming into that and realizing the scope of it. And then the transaction happened. And then, as you said, it became very internal, right? Now the phone stops, ringing and buzzing you. You're not getting emails, you're not getting texts, like, and that there are issues, there's constantly issues, and there, people need somebody, right? And thinking, oh my gosh, what now? This is very, very strange to wake up in the morning and go, oh, I don't have to rush to work. There is nobody waiting for me. It's an incredibly intense time. Those first few days are just kind of, again, pretty surreal. At least they were for me. And then, weeks go by and you start kind of, getting used to this weird vacancy in your life. And the idea of, well, who are you now? Who are you now without that? Because that has been you for decades. And it's very frightening. There's a moment of being a little bit, you're anxious about that, because your identity has immediately switched and you don't know where it's going, right? And so it can be a little frightening, I think. And I think for me, I just kind of held on to my internal strength, which was, you're going to figure this out. It's just, you don't know what it is yet. But I would say that it's a very introspective moment, and it's something to really lean into, and to really listen to who, what those voices in your head are saying. And for me, it was like, you got to move on. what's your next thing? What's your next thing? Because again, that's the speed that I was always working in. That's my natural zone. Go, go, go. And I think it was at that point when I was listening to those people closest to me, right? Your circle, which is always so important when big things happen in your life, whatever that is. So really finding out who your true friends are, you find out if your spouse is really there for you or not, because you're kind of spinning. You feel like you're spinning. And listening to those voices outside of your head, and people saying, take some time, take some time. And I thought, oh, I don't need time. I've got to just move into the next thing. But really, I started to harness that of take the time and really think about who are you, and what is all the work that you've done, everything that you've created over those last several decades. What about it? Like, what about it? What are you going to take from that experience, and what are you going to do with it? And that's why this 4-ounce pour, the keynote that you mentioned earlier, really came to me, because it was, well, what have I learned from the wine industry? Well, what I've learned is that, wow, how lucky have I been to be able to live in this industry? And people would think I'm crazy to sell something like a winery, because I mean, come on, that's the ultimate, right? But actually, I think what I really learned the most, and that's why I put it into words through a keynote, is this idea of 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 moderation, of slowing down, of having a balance in your life. And I learned that through enjoyment of wine. And I think for a lot of people, they're like, what are you talking about? I just drink wine. What's the big deal? But I think as a producer of wine who has always worked with incredible intention, from growing the fruit, and planting the vine, and realizing that you just don't plant a wine grape anywhere in the world. Everything has to be just right. The climate, the soil, the elevation, all those things have to be perfect in order for a grapevine to grow and to be successful. So there's a hell of a lot of intentionality in the growing of the grape. And then, of course, when you're producing it in terms of winemaking, there's a whole other set of intentionality, and it's very slow, and you have to move slowly, and you have to be patient with wine. It takes 2 years, to make great Pinot Noir, just to age it. It takes 4 years to grow the fruit. It takes another 2 years to age it. So all of this is very slow and it's very intentional. And then when it comes to the end of it, you're enjoying wine. But if you watch winemakers, they rarely throw back wine. They rarely hold it in their hands and just toss it back. They actually take the time to look at it, smell it, sip it, enjoy it. And those were things that I just took for granted while I was working. But now, now being on the other side, realizing that those are really beautiful examples of slowing down, of enjoying simple things. And I wanted to share that with other people outside the wine industry. And so that's what created the 4-ounce pour. And I still love sharing that message today, and encouraging people to really be more thoughtful about everything that they do. And I just think it, especially in a time where we're living right now, is so everyone's in hyper speed. We're in hyper speed, and we don't think about stopping what we're doing and listening to the person that we're with. We're thinking about what's next, checking the phone, got to get the hit on the phone. Who's thinking about me? Who's texting me? And so we have to be very intentional about closing that down and being present with whomever or whatever it is that we're doing. And I think it's so vitally important today. So very long-winded answer to whatever the question may have been. Sorry.
No, I actually really love that. And, we've talked, of course, in advance of this, and I really loved your story. And, what I got from that, right? You sold the winery in 2021. I sold my business last year, although I'm still under contract with them for right now. And I've had those thoughts going through my head. What am I going to do next? Are people still going to find me useful? Are people still going to reach out to me? Is this still going to happen? Right. And you're exactly right. It's like, because that's been my mentality, because I go, 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 go. but I really want to be thoughtful about what I'm looking at from a personal standpoint, right? So, can you talk just a little bit about that? Like, what did you do to help you really rediscover, really
Mhm.
define what you wanted to do personally after the sale of the winery?
Right. So, I'm sure like you're very methodical, right? So you're like, okay,
Yes.
what's the
Yes.
next thing? So you write down, what are the things that you love to do? Da da da. And so for me, it was like, okay, what are your options? Well, the option one is that you sell your home and you move to Hawaii or the islands or whatever, and you play golf all day and you play tennis, and that sounds awesome. For a minute, it sounds awesome, but for me, I knew that life was not, I wasn't ready for that life. I knew that I had more in me. I just didn't know what that was. But what was kind of cool is that I realized that I thought I had lost energy. But I hadn't lost energy within me. I had lost energy and enthusiasm for what I had been doing. And so taking that time to decompress almost in a way and slowing down, as my friends and my counsel were helping me with, I realized, no, I still have more in me and I don't want to, I'm not done yet. I'm just not done. And then it was like, you write your list. You're like, well, I love interior design and I love, travel. And so you're like, is that something that I want to do? But I kept feeling the tug of wine back, and of course, right, your network is based, you've got decades of building a network. And so my network was in wine. Um, and so you're just kind of moving around lots of dialogue with lots of people, trying to find your way. And I think for me, it always came back to, if I'm going to stick around and still put my energy into something, I want to have impact. I want to make change. I don't want to just go do something that's frivolous, like that, like playing golf, not that that's frivolous, but full time. Um, I want to do something and continue to give back to my community. And so how could I do that? Well, I believe my 4 ounce pour was doing that, but I got involved. I started a nonprofit that works with foster youth and getting more graduation in foster youth. I got involved with Women in Wine. I got involved with the wine board. A lot of external, again, agencies and groups that were still giving back. And then most recently, the opportunity with Blindfield University, which is where I am today. I was asked to come on board as their director of the Wine Education Center. And at first I was like, oh gosh, higher ed, that's not really, I don't know if that's me. But I thought, but wait, this is actually perfect, because if I have an opportunity to take my background and nurture other young people into this industry and kind of maintain this love of the wine industry and keep that going, maybe that's a perfect thing for me. And so what I'm doing now is I'm really enjoying the work. It's very, very different, but I sort of took my time to find it, and it in a way kind of found me, I suppose, too, in a strange way. So
Beautiful shares. I'm so struck by some of the similarities of your stories, Teresa. You and I have talked about your changes and your transformation from, you owning, running your business, then selling. Hey, everybody, listeners, they say the same things. It's so fascinating. This piece about, I'm not done yet. I'm not
Mm,
done yet. What
I'm
else
not
can I
done yet.
offer?
I want to give
Right?
back,
I
right?
want to
I
give
think
back.
that
Same phrases. And really so cool the part, Maria, where you say, where you recognized the energy question. Like it's no, 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 no. I'm full of energy when I align with what brings me, the real me, to the surface when I'm expressing myself
yeah.
authentically. And hey, guess what? It gets to continue to be wine. So I just love that golden thread that you've had, from being at the dinner table with your parents as they were talking about wine and teaching you some of these principles through
Mhm.
growing up, like we were talking about, and then now being someone who coaches and teaches other folks how to, I mean,
Yeah.
quite literally, you teach people how to set the table and
Mhm.
everything that that represents and sit down and enjoy. You said beautifully, look at it, smell it, sip it, enjoy
Mm,
it.
mm.
Give us a couple more sound bites like that. And perhaps from your experience of working with the land, I know you're really an amazing land steward also. So
Yeah.
from that terminology, the language of working with the land, with the soil, what else would you recommend we, and, particularly entrepreneurs, remember as we go through these different phases of, growing, nurturing, selling businesses?
Mhm. Well, I think a common thread has always been this idea of giving back. And I think as business owners, as entrepreneurs, you know, ensuring that that is a component of our values, that we are going beyond just, making a profit and taking care of our employees, but like beyond that, I believe anyway, that when you are in a leadership position, you have such an amazing opportunity to do more than what is anticipated of you or expected of you. I think, and I would say this perhaps a little boldly, but I do think that women in particular have an extraordinary opportunity to do more than just what is maybe the first objective. We have such an amazing ability and opportunity to bring other women up alongside us and to help women to get to where we are, and I have and this is called mentorships, right? This is mentoring and nurturing other folks, and I think that that is really, really something important, and I think it should be part of leadership value, that it's beyond just profitability. And when it comes to the land, I mean, certainly this industry wouldn't exist without the land. So there's that. And it wouldn't exist without the stewards of the land, the people who work tirelessly year round to ensure that we have food and that we have beverage and that our agriculture and our just, the beauty of our valley is sustained. And so for me, those are very important elements that I was, again, within my industry, I was able to really be a part of. And so I'm constantly thinking about protecting our land. I mean, again, it's pretty inherent because of where I've come, but I've been really working hard with pushing against some of the recent development up against farmland. I'm constantly thinking about ways that we can improve the lives of our stewards, our vineyard stewards, and other agricultural workers. They don't often have a voice, yet we depend on them. So there's again just that thread of I think, what more can you do? What more impact can you have? Take your position seriously, what your role is, and really push it, push the limits of that. I think it's really important. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why we've connected so well, because I've always felt the same way, like about giving back. I mean, that was always a big part of when I owned my company, giving back and even continuing on. Like that's one of the things I for sure want to do. So
Hmm.
as we end today, I'm going
Yes.
to ask you our final question. So how was your pivot a step forward?
Um, oh, leaps and bounds. Not just a step, but beyond a step, just miles, because I learned so much more. Gosh, you do get emotional. Look at that. I got emotional.
Yes, right?
But it's true. You just learn so much about yourself. And you really, when you transition like this, it really forces you to dig so deep, because it is a switch of your identity, of your previous identity. And it's forcing you to dig in deep. And it just is amazing what you can pull out if you allow that process to happen, if you allow it. And again, slow down and really lean into it, which can be frightening because we're used to going so hyper fast, but if you can take the time to really take that look inside. I have been so fortunate that I found my 4-ounce pour, my little keynote. I love it. I love the message that I was able to pull out of those 30 some years, almost 40 years of my life, and to project it in a very different way. So I think it's just not a pivot. It was and I don't know, it's not a full 360. I'm still connected, but it feels so much better. It just feels more like me. And it's an incredible feeling. It's thrilling, actually. So, yeah.
Find that we often get very emotional when we finally let ourselves, and also when we let ourselves do so publicly, get in touch with
Yeah.
ourselves at this deepest level. And those are, sacred tears, really cleansing and purifying and motivating. And I am so excited to continue this conversation this August. We
Yeah.
have an exciting announcement, August 16th, 17th, 18th in Oregon. Courageous Being is so proud to offer Rest and Receive, the first one ever in Oregon, with special guests Teresa Conti and Maria Ponzi, where we will really be focusing on your keynote. We'll use it as a jumping point for other beautiful, restful activities where we will really practice what you were saying, looking at the beauty that we'll be surrounded by, smelling it, feeling it, enjoying it, and learning how to really replenish in a beautiful circle of women. So stay tuned. More information coming.
Wonderful. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward.
I'm super excited about working on this with both of you. So thank you, everybody, for being with us. Thank you to Anna Maria. We really appreciate you being here today. And I'm sure there's a lot more we could talk about, and we might in the future. So thank you to everybody who listened today. We will be back next week. And remember, if you have a pivot, step into it. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Step Into the Pivot. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation. Remember, life is a series of pivots, and it's in those moments of change that we truly grow.
If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, make sure to check out our websites. You'll find additional resources, behind-the-scenes content, and more details about our incredible guests. We love hearing from listeners, so reach out with your thoughts, questions, or your own pivot stories.
To keep the conversation going, be sure to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram, where we share updates, quotes, and engage with our amazing community.
If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback makes a difference, and it helps us bring you meaningful conversations. We're signing off, reminding you that every pivot is a step forward. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Step Into the Pivot.